And it's been the week from hell for Harry and Meghan as their true colours were exposed in a series of damning public attacks. Overnight, transatlantic TV star Kelly Osbourne let rip at the Ginger Whinger with this savage assessment.
He's a whining, whinging, complaining, woe is me, I'm the only one that's ever had mental problems. Like, my life was so hard. Everybody's life is hard.
Yeah,
you were the prince of a
That's true.
goddamn country who dressed up as a Nazi, and now you're trying to come back as the Pope? Suck it.
That came off the back of this stinging rebuke from Spotify executive Bill Simmons just hours after the firm pulled the Sussexes' £15 million Flopcast deal.
Wish I had been involved in the Meghan and Harry leave Spotify negotiation. The fucking grifters. That's the podcast we should have launched with them.
So, Tom Bauer, look, it's great to have you here, by the way, Meghan's biographer. It's a uniquely American word, isn't it, grifter, which means small-scale swindlers. Do you think Bill Simmons used that word purposefully?
Oh, absolutely. I think the timing was on purpose too, because the Dior deal, which we'll talk about in a minute, that was gossip around LA for weeks. So I think he saw a moment to sabotage it. But the grifter story is fascinating because, coincidentally, I heard the reason why he called them the grifters, and that is because they're scroungers, the Sussexes. And I heard this particular story, which is extraordinary, which is that Harry and Meghan were invited to this sun-kissed place by the beach. And they were staying for a couple of days, had arrived with the host's private jet, as usual, and wanted to leave. And then they heard that someone else who was there was quite an interesting person and also had a beautiful house by a beach. And Meghan went up to her and said, "Is there any, let us talk, let us become friends." The following day, after they were taken back home on their private jet, or the host's private jet, Harry called this particular woman and said, "Is there a chance that we could borrow your house? Meghan wonders whether we could have it." And the woman was a bit puzzled by this, but said in the end, OK. A following day, Harry calls and says, Meghan also says, "Can we get there in your private jet?"
Oh, my God.
And that is exactly what the grift is all about. It's about scrounging. It's about Harry and Meghan constantly looking for freebies, whether it's jets, it's houses, meals, whatever. And that is, in the end, what drove Spotify and also Netflix mad.
Because presumably Spotify were paying a lot of money for all of their staff, for all of their demands, but they weren't actually receiving the content in return.
And not only not receiving the content, but constantly demands for expenses because they wanted to live for nothing. Which brings us on to where the Sussex is up to all this year. And we've said many times over the past few weeks, Dan, that Meghan's silence is really odd. She's building up to something big. And there's no doubt that in LA, over the last few weeks, there's been this gossip about the Dior story, which the Mail on Sunday broke big time this weekend. Now, what's really interesting is, of course, Bill Simmons, not coincidentally, is saying they're grifters. But what's really interesting in the rebranding of the Sussexes is, what I also heard very recently, is that Meghan decided that her real object in life was to be Diana. That has always been her passion. That has also been Harry's passion. And Meghan went to the extent of suggesting that they should drop the name Windsor and take the surname Spencer. So she'd be Meghan Spencer, the new Diana. And
So this is a plan that they have actively discussed?
They've actively discussed it, not only by themselves, but with others too. This isn't something that's plucked only in their minds. They were actively trying to recast themselves as Diana and Meghan Spencer. And that is...
So he would go from Harry Windsor to
Harry Spencer too, his mother's name.
But that would be a devastating
blow
it was,
but that is
his father.
Absolutely, it's all about the break-off. And they also have given up the Sussex title because you've got the new incarnation of Diana, which I think it all makes sense if you look at the extraordinary photographs of Meghan this weekend. Very thin, very, very thin, getting ready for the Dior modelling. You know, the new Sharon Stone or Cara Delevingne. I mean, the image was important, and it's all now sabotaged. Everything is broken up. And that's a great blow to them because they're looking for something new and now they're going to have to look for something again.
So potentially changing their name, I mean, that's a seismic thing to do. They'll be aware of that. presumably, Tom, the suggestion there is they acknowledge that this has been a disaster so far in Hollywood. It hasn't worked out as they hoped.
Absolutely, and that was, I think, what we hadn't realised until now, and that's why Dior, it's just a way out of it now. Say we never negotiated. She was looking for a whole new world.
Let's just clarify, Dior, once the grifter comment came out, and once the story ran in the Mail on Sunday, Dior have seen the backlash and quickly said, no.
We never were talking about it, and they certainly were. But the whole point is for the Sussexes, as they still are, and they're not yet the Spencers, this is a major blow. Now what is he going to do to earn money? What's she going to do? And it would have been wonderful to have been the face of Dior. That's a huge money spinner. And so they are really, at the end of it, they've sabotaged themselves. They shot themselves in the foot by being so controversial. And I think that is what people like Dior and other corporations fear. They don't want to be associated with that sort of controversy.
So what, the Sussexes is a tainted brand?
A tainted brand, even a damaged brand, and now a brand which is looking for survival.
And so it's going to be really fascinating to see where they get people to spend this sort of money on them again.
And they need a lot. They need at least $3 to $4 million a year just to pay their overheads.
Because you've obviously got the house, there's a big mortgage on that house, but it's the costs, isn't it, of running that sort of estate, not to mention, by the way, the legal battles that Harry insists on pursuing. And at great cost, right?
And he's got no concept of money. He's never had to worry about money in his life. He'll now have to start worrying about money. She has worried about money all her life, which has been her driving force. And she suddenly finds herself with the possibility of not having this huge income. And that really does worry her. And I think that does put real pressure on them and their relationship.
But Tom, I mean, look, fascinating revelations, and there's clearly so much going on behind the scenes. But when you look at all of this, though, on a sort of macro level, I guess, why did they not just do the work? Why did they not just make the podcast episodes? I mean, are they really that lazy and entitled? Because basically Spotify and Netflix delivered them an opportunity of a lifetime. Did they not realise what they had handed to them on a platter?
Well, Harry has never had to do any work, really. He's only taken orders in the army, and that was the end of his life. He's never done anything. Meghan really has never had the discipline other than as an actress in Suits, and then everything was done for her. She came, read her lines perfectly, and went away. Spotify was actually expecting them to produce the goods. And that requires a lot of imagination, hard work, but also inspiration and talent. And that's one thing which Harry
severely lacking, isn't it?
And Meghan hasn't either. Meghan is a one-trick pony. It was just Suits.
Well, what's so sad, isn't it? They've realised, and it's a crushing realisation, I guess, because they don't want to do it anymore, at least they claim they don't. The only thing anyone's interested in commercially is them slagging off their own family, and that just brings you so much terrible karma.
Well, and that's what's so interesting, that 2 or 3 weeks ago, if you remember, we were discussing how they said they weren't going to discuss any more their family. And now we know why. It was because Dior, or whoever, was saying, you can't be controversial anymore.
Oh, I see.
And that was why they decided they had to be silent. And now that's all up again in the air.
Because, of course, there are a lot of consumers for these luxury brands who are totally disgusted with the way that they have turned not just on their own family, but also the royal institution.
I think so. That's what's so puzzling. I could not understand why would Dior want to be associated with such a tainted person as Meghan. She presents controversy. The one thing Dior is not, with all their different faces over the years, is controversial. So it was... People talk about attitude and things like that, but I couldn't see that. I couldn't see how Meghan could be an influencer other than for a small minority. But for them now, the pressure is on. They are now in the firing line, and that is what's so interesting. Meghan and Harry have now got to really find a new brand, a new role, a new life, and it's not going to be easy for them.
Fascinating reporting, as ever, from the best royal biographer in the business, Tom Bowell. Absolute pleasure to have you. We'll speak next week. Thank you so much.